cruise ship did way back a long time ago. Or I can start talking and tell you that Pete is going to be my voice today and help me keep things along. And then all I have to do is commit if I think something else needs to be added. But I did tell him that I would start out by telling you what all of this good stuff is. Let's see, this one is this current newsletter. Some of you did get and some of you didn't. This is about the trails between Eureka and Arcata. It was on the HCOB agenda last Thursday, but they never did quite get to it. This is an article that I wrote last October, and I've been promising myself I'd write another one, and I haven't. Someday, maybe. Now let's see what this is. Oh, this is more of today's newsletter. And this is too. Oh, and this is some information that I got from Mitch to include in the newsletter, and I didn't get it in time, so I made copies. And it gives their estimate of why it's important to have rails included as part of the public transportation. And it's on, maybe. It's on.
It was working good.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yep. Barely.
Barely, huh? Well, rather than go over this whole thing again, I will turn this over to Pete. Glad you're all here. There's all kinds of goodies there for you to pick up if you want to take them with you. And with that, make sure you sign in sign-up sheet, and if you have new information for us, fine, but at least give us your names. And it looks like we're all pretty much know each other, pretty much, and so I don't think we'll go around, I don't think we need to go around and everybody say who they are. The only thing is if you have something really quick that you want to tell us before we get started, we can do that. I will turn it now over to Pete.
Where's the tip jar? Do we have a tip jar going around yet?
No, we don't.
Where is it? Oh, there it is.
Not today.
I've got to put mine in there.
Unless you're buying it.
How about going around and any announcements, update on what might be happening to one of the Navy ships parking here or anything like that? No? Marcus?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and promote our dinner option coming up. It is April 19th, and it is our single largest fundraising event. This is what really does the lion's share of the funding for the projects that we do. And of course, the project that's on the table next is if you look out here and see these roofs, these are the buildings that are the historic Samoa Shop Complex built in the 1890s. Last year we re-roofed the roundhouse. This year we're going to re-roof the boiler shop building, which will be a more extensive project because there's a lot more damage to the structural parts of the building. So we need to raise money. On the table, those yellow cards are the ticket order form for the dinner and auction. It will be at River Lodge. There's also a place there if you'd like to just donate money. We'll take that too. If anybody wants to donate auction items, whatever. So we'll take all the help we can get. Encourage you to support that. Thanks.
Marcus, can you might mention how much good they're doing on the tracks?
Yeah, the track clearing that's taking place here.
Right. Well, one of the things that we really want to make happen for us is the tourist train. And right here will be the museum and the base of operation. And so, as a baby step, we have what's called a cruise feeder. It would haul loggers up into the woods. And so Larry right here is leading the effort. The second and fourth Saturday, they're out there whacking down the weeds. And we've started right out here at the driveway of the Samoa Cook House, and we're working our way towards Arcata. And so when you go back and you cross over the Samoa Bridge, don't take your eyes off the road for long, but look either way and you'll see that, by golly, the tracks are clear of brush down there looking both ways. And that's because of the people, including myself, that have gone out there and whacked down the brush. And our goal is to start giving rides on that little speeder this summer. Also, there's it's a national organization for people that own these little personal rail cars that the track crews used to use. And they are planning tentatively to have a run on May 17th. So that's also what we're doing, is kind of clearing the tracks so that whoever people that want to come and do this recreational use of the railroad can also do that on May 17th.
You know, the clearing of the tracks, weather permitting, is a lot of fun. There's you get the pleasure of looking at all those migratory chickens on the bay, but one of the considerations that we have when we're clearing the tracks is that there can't be any nesting birds near the area that we're clearing. So
we have a biologist on site.
Yeah, and so we're on the lookout for that. But it's actually a fun thing. It's not a nasty job. It's really a lot of fun. And weather permitting, consider joining us on Saturday mornings. Any other announcements? Kim Floyd with Caltrans is here, and she's going to give us an update on all the STA truck upgrades for egress and entrance into the county. And as we know, this is so very important to keep our businesses competitive and viable, and not have to rely for some of the businesses getting special state exemptions from these issues, and the fact that the new trucks are more energy efficient by 2 or 3 miles per gallon more than the old trucks, which are not being made. And it's such a problem when you have the old trucks, is that the owners of the old trucks would have to put in great expenditures into upgrading them to meet the demands that are going to be mandated in a year or two. So with that, Kim, I might mention this. Oh yeah, Kim has some handouts, and I'll pass them around, and you can take one to the table. U.S. Route 101 Richardson Grove Improvement Project. But as we know, there are 3 improvement projects that are salient to our being in communication with the outside world via the road system. Kim, why don't you...
Thanks. See if I can take this out. Well, thank you for having me here today. I do have this handout on Richardson's Grove. It's specific to the Richardson's Grove Improvement Project. But as Pete indicated, we do have a few other projects that are in the works to relieve existing Surface Transportation Assistance Act. That's the STAA federal law, that we are trying to relieve those restrictions on the state highways here in District 1, which includes Del Norte County, Mendocino County, Lake County, and Humboldt County. Right now, we just completed a project, a very minor project at Big Lagoon. I wanted to touch upon real quickly. There was a curve there that could not accommodate the larger vehicles, and we just made improvements there. We have not removed the restriction yet, because what we have to do, we have signs on order, because now we're going to have to place signs at 299 and 200, a couple other locations where, because the trucks couldn't get down this far, we didn't have to have signs up. So within the next few weeks, we should have a press release. Basically now we'll have STA truck access on 101 down to the Eureka area. Now Del Norte County has been, and these aren't my projects, but I can talk a little bit about them. Del Norte County has been very interested in having the STAA truck access on 199 and 197, since that's the most direct route over from I-5. So there's a few projects scheduled to complete minor work on those routes to provide for the improvements. And I believe they have a public meeting. If you wanted more information on that, those projects, I could get you more information. They do have a public meeting scheduled. I believe it's later this month up in Del Norte County on those projects. So that's kind of what's going on to the north. One of the big things, though, has been Richardson's Grove. For years, it's been an issue. Many years ago, in the 1950s, we had identified basically having a 4-lane bypass or 4-lane facility at that location on Route 101. And it sat on the books for years. It was part of our route concept. And about 8 or so years ago, the California Transportation Commission said, this project's been on the books for a very long time. Maybe you should take a look at, and it wasn't just that project. There were other long-standing projects that Caltrans was asked to take a look at to see if they were feasible. So we did do a feasibility analysis of a bypass of Richardson's Grove and really determined that it was infeasible to be looking at that due to cost and environmental impacts. So the California Transportation Commission agreed with that, and we pretty much changed our route concept at that location to retain the existing facilities there and make improvements as needed. Of course, there was the concern at the county level as well as the Highway Patrol and the Trucking Association that we remove that restriction. The existing restriction, and this is in the handout here, is for an overall length, truck and trailer, of 65 feet maximum. So what people are trying to do is they're really trying to maximize the size of the trailer that they're carrying down there, and they're using these older style trucks. A lot of them are, and I'm certainly not a truck expert, but I'm learning more about them with this project, but a lot of them are the cab over type where the driver sits on top of the engine. They're not very efficient, they're noisy, they're not good for the drivers, from what I'm told, don't like that situation. And I've been working with local businesses. I've been hearing a lot from small local businesses here about how greatly they are impacted by this restriction and what it means to them. So what we will do is we're going to make improvements through the grove there and to the north a little bit to allow for basically a 53-foot maximum trailer. And this will accommodate even some of the tourism aspects, because I've been told that CHP has had to turn away people with a large motorhome, maybe towing a boat or another vehicle, and they've had to say, listen, you can move forward, but you've got to leave the boat somewhere else because you can't take it through. So, so what we're doing is we had what was called a technical assistance group that was working to try and figure out what we could do to remove that restriction and try not to remove any of the old growth trees or to impact the park setting down there. And in April of about, I guess it was about 2007, here we are 2008, we had a detailed survey done, including all the trees in that area, and with some of the more modern engineering software, we were basically able to say, what is the minimum it takes to get the trucks through? And this software will basically template the trucks through the system, and we found that with minor improvements, we can provide for STA truck access without removing any old growth redwood trees. And it really is a minor project. We're going to still have the two 12-foot lanes down there. We're going to still have the large trees near the traveled way, but we're basically, and we're actually going to have a highway through there with more curves than we have today, because what we're trying to do is line the trucks up so they're in the right position as they pass through that real heart of the grove where the large trees are. So we've got, it's about a mile-long project broken into 3 segments, one being through the grove where we're kind of just shifting the road from side to side to line up for the trees. And then I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a bridge down there just south of the park entrance. We get a small segment where we don't really need to do anything through there, and then singing trees in the private area a little bit to the north, we're going to be doing some improvements as well. So it's exciting that we're able to do this. It's about a $6 million project. We're taking a lot of measures to minimize the impacts through the park. And you guys, I think I'm too close. Okay. So we're looking at handwork through the park. We've had a lot of concerned groups that are concerned about impacts to tree roots. I do have, one of the things to point out is on this, if you're interested, we've got all of the layouts on our project website that show the new proposed alignment and where the trees are. So that might be something if you're interested in printing those out. And I did bring kind of one set. It's, if you print them out, it's about 26 pages to really see them. This is only about 4 pages. But I did want to say I was out in the field last Friday, and this is a picture. This tree here is the largest redwood tree that would be removed as part of this project. It's about 19 inches in diameter, the one that the woman is standing in front of. And it's actually in the new fill slope, so we're trying to be real conservative. We may not have to remove it, but we're counting it for now. So that's not to say that there aren't other trees that will be removed, but they're fairly small trees, and it really is I think once we're done with the project, you'll still have that really sense of kind of the gateway sense that some people like to call it through Richardson's Grove. It's going to still retain a lot of the character that people appreciate. So what we're looking at is, how many people have been to the public meetings? We recently had one in February. Okay. We're looking at, I'll just let everybody know here, and this date may change, but we're looking at circulating our draft environmental document a little later this month and having our public meeting at the River Lodge down in Fortuna on May 14th for the public comment period. I do have that room reserved, but it could change, so if you just want to pencil that down, we'll certainly have a press release and notify everybody of the exact time and date. So what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to get the project, finalize the environmental process in the summer. We do have some permits required because we do have to do some culvert extension work, very minor, but it does require permits. So hopefully by early next year we can begin the project and have it complete in time for the summer tourism season. And then we hope to, really be done in that location for the time being. So that's really what I have on Richardson's Grove. We could also pass these around if anybody wanted to take a look at those. If there were any questions, I could answer questions. I know that Kay had also asked me to talk a little bit about the Utica Arcadic Corridor project, but that's, question.
Are you having to file a full EIR on the project?
That's a question that comes up quite a bit, and what we have said is Caltrans management, as well as the Federal Highway Administration management, do the level of document commensurate with the level of impact. And none of our studies to date have indicated that we're going to have a significant impact from these proposed improvements. So we are moving forward with an environmental assessment initial study. And that's not to say that we're not, you do a lot of the technical studies that you would do with an EIR, we just haven't identified a significant impact. So it's more of a process thing with an EIR where you go out to public scoping and it has to be notified in the state and federal registers. But if for some reason there is some significant impact that's identified, then we may have to go back and
It's $6 million.
Yes.
If this were a private project, if I were cutting my own road, that one 16-inch tree and some other walls around the side, would I have to file an EIR?
If it was a private project?
Yes.
Well, you would have to, you would have to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act. And we take federal funding, so we also have to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. So we've got those two two environmental documents to prepare. I think in terms of a private property, though, if it's solely private property, you know, well, yeah. It depends on your impacts. If you can say what your development is, and certainly, you know, if you're going to be connecting to a state highway, we would be curious what your impacts to our facility would be, and those sorts of things. If you had any work that required fish and game permits, or so, you know, private individuals still have to work through those
I'm
parts
trying
of
to
the
get to the
process.
crux issue, which seems to be one of the problems that we face on this project. I am for this project, and I went down and I saw that.
I remember
think
you
it's a
saying.
stintingly amount of improvements you guys are doing to make this thing work. It's just remarkable. I mean, you've got it down to 4 leaves on the left-hand side and 2 branches on the right to make it work. It seems like a very light amount of impact. But I was thinking about that as in terms of how people could stop it, because it, you know, your interpretation is we don't have to file EIR because we're the state. No, that sort of thing. I just wondered whether if that's something that the applicants need in the state of California, can the applicant make that interpretation without it being challenged? That's my
Well,
question.
we can certainly, as the lead agency, make the call on what document we want to do. It can be challenged. Somebody could claim that, you know, they think that either the process wasn't followed correctly, or that there was a significant impact that we didn't address as significant. You know, so we could certainly be challenged.
I like the project. I'm disappointed that you're getting, you know, challenged on it, because I think it is really a lightly impacting project that does a great amount of good. And I know many of these business people. I was talking to
Yeah.
Barbara Groom with the brewery.
Yes.
The cost of her reloading trucks is just ridiculous.
Right.
Chevrolet Cheese and other people who are shipping goods out, that it just, these are very small businesses who flirt with moving out of the area
They
as a
do.
result of this,
Right.
this particular challenge. So it's a very valuable project. Must go for it.
And then John?
Yeah.
Could you review what has happened at Big Lagoon in relation to STAA? And we know that the STAA that you're facilitating on all these venues doesn't change the weight limitations on the trucks. But it does change the volume limitation. And we were informed that, for instance, the bulk farms will be able to ship approximately 16% of the product on each truck. So that will,
That's right.
in theory, with no growth, reduce the number of trucks on the road, because they'll use 1/6 less trucks to ship the goods that they have to ship on a yearly basis. And that translates to not only a big cost saving, but and fuel saving and all the rest, but it also translates to that much less truck-auto conflict on the road. So getting back to 2 aspects, would you review what you had testimony for negative considerations for your project, and at Richardson Grove, because that was where I'm referring to, and also what you've done or intend to do at Big Lagoon?
Well, at Big Lagoon, we just finished the project. It was very minor. It was basically, we had the room to put a little bit more pavement down. We had to do some safety, extend some guardrail. It was minor to relieve that restriction. That is done. We just haven't taken the signs down, and that's what I was indicating earlier. It's because they have to order additional signs to place, so that as people come into town, they know that they can't take 299 over to Reading and that. So a few more signs have to go up. We also have to coordinate with the CHP on enforcement. My understanding is that's been done. So as soon as those signs come in, that route's open. 101 from Oregon down to Humboldt County. We'll also, I'm assuming they're going to place another sign so people know that they can't make it down to San Francisco still. So that's done. That was minor. In terms of the comments we're getting on Richardson's Grove, there's just a lot of misinformation going on there. We're trying to, you know, a lot of people think that speed is the issue. And, you know, certainly people may be speeding through there. I'm not sure it's posted at 40 miles per hour. But the trucks, you know, whether it's posted 20 miles per hour or 40 miles per hour, it's a geometry issue. We need to make improvements so that they can get through there. When I was down in the field Friday, we were out there. One of the areas where we're having to shift the most, it's about 15 feet over to line the truck set between the trees. And there's miras. There, it looked like there was a set of steps that were broken off, side steps on a truck. The trees are all banged up. I mean, I took photographs of it from, you know, fresh bark where you could see somebody hit it. But so I try to explain to people it's not simply something that we can just reduce the speed. The other thing that people were concerned with was, can you really do it without removing the tree? And once they start to see that, yeah, we can do that, there was issues about tree roots. So we're trying to address all those things. We've got a special type of base we're going to use through the grove that's more permeable and isn't as hot, doesn't require the same compaction that a normal, you know, costs a little bit more, but we're going to do that. Then now we're hearing about growth. There's concerns about, you know, growth-inducing impacts. So those are all things that whether you do an EIR or you know, environmental assessment, you have to address those issues. And in our case, we don't see a significant, you know, nothing's rising to the level of significance.
Well, there was a concern expressed that this facilitation will affect tourism because people come here for a pristine, and somehow this was going to affect that. I'm relating it. I find it a bit specious, but there were concerns like that expressed, and I applaud you with listening to them with the quorum that all the members of exhibited, even though that decorum wasn't reciprocated by people in the audience, which is too bad, because when you yell, you can't hear what's being said sometimes, and we suffer, because the idea is to get a quality project and the quality input to commensurate with that goal. So,
right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
The SGA length that this project deals with, does that include the trucks on interstate and triples and all those?
It's not. Triples are currently not allowed in the state of California, and that's not going to change.
Well, that was a leading question, because
Right.
I've heard that from a lot of people who are afraid that development will explode because of all these huge trucks, and there's not that much additional length we're talking about, and they're still, you know, standard-looking trucks. And the other thing is that as far as, well, in my career, I worked for several companies that have been affected here locally by the fact that we couldn't bring in these longer trucks.
Right.
And there are private haulers that go up and down California, that come down into Oregon, who at times can, when you call a dispatcher and you have a load of something you want going out, that they're restricted from coming into Humboldt County because they're standard-sized trucks that are, you know, that they're independents.
Right.
And we've gotten a few over when I worked at one of the pulp mills. Got a couple over here that didn't realize that there was these length limitations, so we couldn't even load trucks. And I don't know how they even got out of here with them.
And that's what's frustrating for some of the local businesses, is they get a reputation on the outside for being tough to deal with because of this restriction. I've been working with O&M Industries, Rob Macbeth, and they've actually had to have, you know, things shipped to other states because people were like, we're not dealing with Humboldt County and the transportation restrictions.
Well,
there.
Amulet Manufacturing left, and that was a major reason.
Right.
Okay. But I just want to point out this business of independent truckers who have standard-sized trucks that get caught up not being able to come in. That's another way of keeping your freight costs down, by going out and finding different haulers for the products. And so anyway, we ended up having
Right. Well, I guess, too, I heard that HSU had a musical production, a Broadway musical production a few years ago. I don't know if you guys all heard this, coming up for performance, and they got stopped, and they had to rebuild a makeshift set at the Van Duzer because they couldn't bring their set up. They had to leave it down there. They sent somebody down to get the costumes, but sometimes people are unaware. These restrictions aren't very common. It does catch people off guard, I guess. Did you have a question?
I was at that the forum at the Wharfinger building, and there was one woman in particular who was talking about the tourism issue, and then how her business could be impacted because of the changes in the road. I had heard from the Visitors Bureau that a survey done, about 70% of the tourists that come to this area that they polled were actually around 299 from the Reading area. I was wondering if that's consistent with what you heard,
No.
or does Caltrans know where the bulk of the traffic that arrives in this area comes from, either 299 or 101?
We have traffic count information for all of the routes and the segments of it, but I don't know. And I know that the person you're talking about, she's a business owner, and I can understand people's concerns. That's the reason why we have public comment. We want to hear these things. But, there's, again, people, I've heard widening and straightening and those sorts of things, and that's not what this project about. The character of that road isn't going to change, in my opinion. It's going to be curvier. There's still going to be the situation that you don't experience in a lot of other state highways with large trees right, next to the highway. I think it's still going to be that gateway to Humboldt, as people like to refer to it. And I think there are going to be temporary impacts during construction. One thing I didn't talk about is we do have to build a wall on the north end of the project, and that was partly because there's some homes up at the top and the type of material we're dealing with, and the trees all became an issue that we elected to build a wall, so it's going to take a little bit longer to build the project now with that feature. So,
The answer to your question as a member of the Tourist Bureau on the board is that well over 80% of our visitors here come from the Bay Area and Sacramento, and a few come from the Oregon, Southern Oregon. So our tourism is more than 80% within 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours of this area. It's hard to pin it down, and we know that there's a potential through Salt Lake City now with the airplane, but that's undeveloped, and the Bureau has made a decision to make a association with the tourist bureaus in Salt Lake City to see if we can facilitate that, in addition to the local Mormon communities. And but we think most of that comes through 101 and not 299, and then a small percentage from the north.
yeah,
Well, the important thing is that there's still going to be a forest canopy over the highway, which
Right.
makes it a very unusual stretch of road
Right.
that you don't see hardly anywhere
Right.
else.
Yeah.
And it's not the widest that you see the sky, so you still have to turn your headlights on.
Anybody else that wants to ask him
see
anything?
one more hand up.
There's been a lot of opposition I've noticed, trying to, thinking that they can, if they prevent this project, they'll prevent like Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart, that kind of thing. Can you comment on that?
That preventing this project would prevent.
Home Depot,
They're two
Lowe's.
separate projects. I mean, any development of that sort that's not here has to go through its process.
Right, but they're thinking like by preventing these bigger
That's
trucks.
up to the store. If the store wants to come, and those bigger stores have the ability, I think, to better handle restrictions than a small business locally. They've got that are farming out the shipping and trying to find these trucks that are harder to find and such. But I don't think that's really the removal of the restriction is going to help everybody that has to bring goods in and out. It's not going to benefit one more than the other.
This has nothing to do with the two projects, but I'm annoyed as a bladder challenged person that there aren't more rest stops along between here and San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that ever going to happen?
With the funding issues right now, I would say probably not anytime soon. I think recently we even had to fight. They wanted to close some of them down, and we wanted to keep ours open, but there's nothing programmed right now, I can tell you, and I wouldn't see it on the
And on
horizon.
299, are they going to reopen that one?
I don't know the status of that. I can find out for you.
Kim, what's the source of the $6 million?
It's not funded yet, but it would be the SHOP program. It's an operational improvement that would be funded through the State Highway Operation Protection Program.
I want to thank Kim for coming and listening. When she has information ready for the safety corridor project, we will invite her back.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
The thing in the newsletter, I wanted just to emphasize that the Humboldt County League of Women Voters will have that transportation forum on April 22nd, and I don't think we know where it's going to be at this point, do we? Or
It's
have we?
going to be at the new theater that Community Access has in the industrial building at Eureka High. I don't know exactly where that is, but that's the latest information I got in the industrial building.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. And there are programs here.
John, as you know, is the NCRA representative, one of the two from Humboldt County, and he's going to kind of update us on all the things that are happening. I passed around some comments from Mitch Stogner of issues associated with the utterances from the Marin County Board of Supervisor representative about not in my backyard trains, their concerns. John, give us an update of what's happening on this massive project.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Kay. Good to be here. First is the bad news is that the judge came out today with a ruling against us in the Nevada lawsuit. Which is
my off. I think it's turn it off.
It's like you're getting some sort of I thought I was breathing into it too hard.
It's like it's thundering.
Yeah.
Maybe just turn it.
There we go.
Very good, okay.
That's better.
Now that we're back.
He had made a tentative ruling some time ago, and when we then appeared before him to argue the case, he pulled back from making that ruling and spent now the last couple of weeks or so wrestling with that. We still are kind of head scratching over it. I have not heard the details of what he said in the ruling. However, I can say that we're immediately appealing this to the First District Appellate Court in San Francisco, because we still believe that in the process he misread the understanding of CEQA that we had a certified EIR, and that we moved forward with that such that both Caltrans and CTC supported it. So it affects, in a sense, a precedent-setting notion, I believe, that it could affect a whole bunch of projects elsewhere if this were to become a published ruling soon. So anyway, we'll see what happens. So that's where you'll have to watch what happens next.
What did they rule against? What was the ruling?
Yeah, essentially it says that the Nevada lawsuit believed that that the statute of limitations had not run out because we had not completed the EIR on the operations, which is a separate EIR. So they were arguing that we didn't, therefore you can open it back up and allow for challenges on the EIR that's on the rebuilding of the rail line. So even the CTC staff, I'm not sure of all the other folks, but have been advising us and working with us from their legal department as well. So, you know, we're still hopeful. We have to remember this is a Marin County Superior Court judge that ruled against us as well. So there's that. We will be meeting next week in Petaluma. I won't be there. I'll be in D.C. Looking into a climate change summit as well as a homeless summit that are happening at the same time. So I'm trying to get my last licks of travel in before I step down from being a student supervisor. We are on target still with moving forward on the bridge, excuse me, the timber bridge repairs and the signal crossings that we were funded for. So that we will hear more updates, as well as then what does this ruling do for us now. But I'm hopeful that the appeal will stay the ruling, meaning that we can continue on with the work. But we'll know more about that next week when the board meets again in Petaluma, I think on Wednesday. Yes.
Yeah,
Other than that, as far as trail development, we did, with Dan's help and others, point out with the Surface Transportation Board that the portion of the Annie and Mary that people would like to see trail development on had not been fully abandoned. That is, it's still seen as part of the system, which means that then as the tracks are now out, we can proceed with trying to develop more of a trail system between Blue Lake and Arcata, which many people would like to see. So I've worked with the city of Blue Lake to then see that we can lease portions of the right-of-way inside the city limits for developing a trail as the first segment. From there, it's going to take a lot more dedicated work of people that are supportive of the trail system between the city limits of Blue Lake and Arcata. That's not something NCRA can or should do. It's up to the individuals and community groups that will want to make that happen. So once we kind of lay out a plan there, I think we'll then go through what's, I believe, and Dan, you can correct me, is really the formal abandonment but rail banking procedure you have to go to protect the corridor use so that we can provide for trail access there as well. Speaking of trails, we might have seen the $50 million application that we're trying for that will go into, we hope, the next authorization of the federal transportation bill. So it is a bit out there in time. We've been identified as one of the 6 communities throughout the United States that has a very good likelihood that we'd be a pilot project for those funds. Now, does that mean we'll negatively impact the rail? I think legally it's going to be very difficult for that chance to take place, but it does mean the rail has already said, has gone on record, that wherever a trail can work with the rail, that is rails with trails, we'll certainly be able to provide use of our right-of-way in that regard. Because we're looking at not just the corridor, 101 Eureka-Arcata, but obviously other parts of Humboldt County. So we're excited about that. We think that'll help quite a bit to relieve some of the controversies if we were able to get some of those funds. Meanwhile, though, I've been asking for the public works directors, Caltrans, and others to participate at that level in identifying what are they doing now for trails, what's in the pipeline, so at least we can learn, which we were fine to discover, like Eureka and the county didn't know what each other was doing in terms of trail development, which is probably not surprising. But through this kind of system, then not only can we better identify where we are going in the near term, but what are the gaps? What were the, for example, if we are fortunate to get a good hunk of funds, how can we apply it and relieve the gaps that we see in the trail system? People use more than just the 101 corridor. I don't know how many of you notice if you're coming out 255, but there's a great number of bike riders coming out here, which is great. And with the Hammond Bridge, Hammond Trail rather, coming over, people are just coming into this great arena of throughout the Arcata Bottom, and then they come out through Jackson Ranch Road. They can turn right and come out to the coastal expanse that we have with the Friends of the Dunes, the Manila Community Center, the Manila Park, all the way out to Samoa. So for a coastal trail aspect, this is one arena that we ought to try and encourage. Maybe Kim can address this, but I believe that Highway 255, the bridge, they're going to be restriping that, so you'll get, I believe it's 5-foot shoulders on both sides.
Good.
So the safety impact of that is going to be tremendous for bike riders going to Eureka from Arcata in that direction. It doesn't mean we drop the 101 corridor project for trail. It just means that it's another part of a way that we can have mobility factors taken care of for the non-motorized public, which is a healthy thing to do.
Black Point Bridge, I think I saw something that Barge did it again.
Right.
Coast Guard is asking the railroad to move it. Is that correct?
I don't think that's the case.
No.
I think I'd be surprised if it was.
I know I seen down the center of the paper they were talking the Coast Guard was talking about doing that, but they're not trying to press it either.
Yeah, that's good. The Black Point Bridge. Coast Guard issue has been around for many years and hasn't changed. Coast Guard argues that as long as you're not running trains that will move the bridge, the railroad argues that we can't run trains without the bridge. So, bridge stays, Coast Guard loses.
We had in my first year on my watch with NCRA, that very same thing, and it really caused some real major damage. We had to go to the mat with the Coast Guard to protect the suspended railroad that it is, because it's still active in STB's line, so they can't take out the bridges, as Dan says, would destroy the railroad. And we finally, we do have cooperation now with barge operators to recognize that they've got to be responsible for that. So I'm hopeful things are better, but again, I haven't heard anything else beyond what I've been saying.
Anything else for John?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lots of times John can't come to our meetings because he has a first Wednesday of the month meeting down in Sacramento, so I'm appreciative that he was able to come this time. I got one little tidbit that I put in my newsletter asking, do people really want to travel on railroads? And if anybody's interested, I'm now getting weekly newsletters from RailPack, Rick Silver, and I have websites and emails. If anybody wants information on how much rail requests are growing, how many more people are wanting to use the railroad and stay off the highway because the gas is so expensive. Every week now.
Every time there's a commuter rail project, the ridership exceeds projections, even in Salt Lake City.
So anyway,
Even in the LA area.
I think the trail issue in Blue Lake, I don't think enforcement will be a problem. They have a good reservoir of automatic weapons out there for them. Kim, there's an issue that you should be aware of, even if it isn't your project, is that the Newton Road for Prairie Creek, whatever the official name is, there's a disconnect in the need of our community and the labeling of that road, because tourists cannot appreciate what that road is, even though there are some minor signs that say alternate. I think you would do a good service to the area if more salient signage was created to let the traveling public know that one of the half a dozen prettiest drives in California is right there. And there are great assets there to be garnered economically if tourists know about it, but most assuredly socially, I think it would be an appropriate consideration to get signage to direct that asset to the attention of tourists. It is just obscure, and I know I've had this discussion before with members of Caltrans that have said, well, it's signed. But nobody really understands what that signage means.
Okay.
And so I'm raising that issue again.
I had a friend that worked for the National Park Service there at Oric in the Visitor Center, and he told me that you have a lot of people coming southbound. They say, well, so where is that scenic road? And he'd say, you already went by it.
I missed it, yeah. Okay.
And the turning onto it is difficult on the south. On the north, it's pretty easy, but the signage is stupid.
Right. Okay.
So, technical term.
Why couldn't it just be called a continuation of Avenue of the Giants? Because that works all the way through the south, it should just continue right on up north.
That's a good idea.
Avenue of the Giants north.
Yeah.
Well, just all the same thing, it's Avenue of the Giants.
And the Giants even has a little map that they put on posts at each end of it.
It turns out that on our Convention Bureau website, that Avenue of the Giants is one of the two top significant terms on the search engine. Redwoods is the other. And as you probably already know, that amongst the top 5 reasons why tourists come to Humboldt County are seashores, redwoods, coastline rivers, and either number 5 or number 6 are the old buildings. So all these, for attracting people here, are important. Keeping them here is a different set of issues, you know. But
Well, I'll take that back.
you may want to look at it yourself if you're ever driving by there. Just
I've noticed that now that you mention that. When I first moved to the area, it's like, you're right, it's not signed very
I mean, who cares who's Newton what? I apologize to his
No.
family, you know, that's, but what is signage for? Is it an ego thing for something that has marginal historic value, or is it for local information for the traveling public? Anybody else? Any announcements of coming up events that we want to address? And
Come to the league meeting on the 22nd.
I'll try and send out an email with it to pollute your email. And Sindretto, I hope you're up and running by then.
I'll try to have a new ad.
Thank you, Kim, for taking the time and making the effort. And John, thank you for the huge amount of energy you put into the different issues that you're involved with. And thank you for joining us today.